Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Governor Mike Braun wants to cut $700 million in state operational spending and get rid of the wait list for child care vouchers. Those are some of the highlights from the budget proposal that he released on Thursday. The governor also wants to raise teacher pay and cap property taxes. Here's some of what he had to say as he rolled out his budget.
I want to make sure that we continue what we've been doing over the last 20 years, and I'm going to take a pragmatic, business-minded approach to government. And I said I'm going to be fiscally conservative and politically entrepreneurial, meaning that I want to look at all the issues we deal with. And I don't know why anybody would be opposed to it, because you get more done doing that. Some of the particular priorities: K through 12 education, half our budget. Almost all states struggle with the same thing we need to do better at. How do we show steady improvement through every grade, and why have we been stuck for so long in places when we've tried so many different things to make it better? So I'm going to be looking at all the leading edge ways that we teach. I'm a big believer that we got to get more money into the classroom, not on the building and the operations, but into instruction, teachers. We're going to make Choice Scholarship Program universal for all Hoosier families, and to be honest, we've gotten very close to that because we've been on that a long time. I come from a great public school district. Kids have gone there, grandkids. Not all places have it. When you don't, you need options because you don't want parents to be in a dead end. Proposing a 4-year phase out of the tax on retirement income. That doesn't amount to a lot in terms of the revenue relative to other sources, but it means a lot, I think, to people when they get to that stage in life. I campaigned on it. I'm going to try to do my best to get some of this stuff done. And yesterday in a discussion with the Speaker and President Pro Tem, we're close enough on this stuff, and then you get into the whole machinery of getting it across the finish line. Also put out there several tax holidays to make it a little easier for Hoosier families, including the back to school and youth sports sales tax holidays, outdoor recreation tax holidays, and I'm going to look for others that are going to have impact. And again, how do you do it? You run the government more efficiently. That's how you pay for it. We're not just looking in one area, we're looking across the board, and we're going to have each cabinet secretary find where that's going to be in their own domain, and that's going to be something we flesh out over the next 3.5 months. And the fact that I did that was part of it in 15, 16, and 17, and remember then, that was the year of road funding in 17. Wasn't mentioned here. That's another big strategic thing that we're going to have to work on. So a lot of moving parts. But we're going to ask, and it won't be as hard the first year to find savings. Then the key is, what can you extract year after year, and we'll still be looking for them then.
Meanwhile, in an exclusive interview, the highest-ranking members of the Indiana House say homeowners can be assured of property tax changes this session. For the first time, both the Speaker of the Indiana House and the House Minority Leader joined All Indiana Politics for a joint interview with our government reporter, Garrett Bergquist.
And joining us now are the two highest-ranking members of the Indiana House of Representatives, House Speaker Todd Houston and House Minority Leader Phil Giacquetta. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks.
So, Mr. Speaker, I'll begin with you. We've got a new governor now, and it's worth pointing out that Governor Braun did serve for about 1.5 terms in the Indiana House before he went to the Senate. How does that change the power dynamic between the General Assembly and the governor's office?
Well, I think, Governor Braun's previous experience in the State House and the House Republican Caucus, he's very aware of the work that we do and how we do our work. And I don't think it'll change the power dynamic. It's always been collaborative, and I suspect it'll continue to be that way with Governor Braun.
And so, to Leader Giaquinta then, do you see any areas where Democrats might be able to also work with the Braun administration?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, I looked at the last couple sessions where we worked with House Republicans on several issues, and particularly when it comes to healthcare costs and the things that we've done with regards to transparency and hospital billing and those sorts of things. So I'm sure we're always open-minded to extend our hand and to work on any issues that the governor's going to feel like that's important to his agenda with regards to, again, healthcare costs, education funding, those type of things. So yeah, we're willing and ready and able.
Mr. Speaker, we've already seen multiple pieces of legislation filed in both chambers on property taxes. Senate Republicans have basically brought in Braun's plan as Senate Bill 1, and you've indicated that, at least for the time being, we're going to let the Senate take the lead on that. From what you're seeing in your caucus, how likely is it we get some sort of property tax relief, and what shape might that take?
I think we'll get property tax relief. You know, the way it works is the budget starts in the House, and we'll spend our time focusing in the first half of the legislative session on the budget. The Senate's put property tax relief as Senate Bill 1, and then they'll deal with it in the first half. Then we'll switch sides, and I'll have a chance to do the budget, and we'll have a chance to do property taxes. But look, we've heard loud and clear from our constituents that they want they want property tax relief and more reliable tax bills without huge leaps. And we're working together to find that right balance between making sure that we provide property tax relief and yet also make sure that the local units of government have the resources they need to be able to provide the services that their constituents want.
And to that point, Leader Giaquinta, several members of your caucus have raised the concern of potentially losing some of that local tax revenue, and your party's nominee for governor brought that up as well. What to you would be a solution that would prevent that while still getting that property tax relief?
Well, and it's complicated. We recognize that. One thing that we've said is that we don't believe, anyway, that funding for education has kept up where it should have, at least the previous 10 years compared to the 10 years before that. And so that has resulted in school districts having to go pass referendum, which then leads to an increase in property taxes. So, if there's ways that we can make sure that we're fully funding, we believe fully funding education in all forms in the state, that will help with property taxes. And just along that same lines, we do think that we need, I've said before, we need more property owners. That includes obviously looking at ways to build on plenty of vacant land and spots around the state that have been old houses that have been torn down. How can we get more inventory into the state? And then what can we do to make ways for folks that can't currently, particularly new homeowners that can't currently buy a house? Is there some assistance that the state can provide? We need more property owners.
And I would note here that Indiana already is a low property tax state, so the system doesn't need to be completely blown up. It needs to be refined to make sure we don't see such large increases that property tax payers have seen the last few years. And then, as noted, just finding that right balance between what local units of government need for the needs and services that they offer, and what is relief we can provide to the actual individual property tax owner.
And I'll add too, and maybe I didn't answer it, when it does come to local governments, we want to make sure that they have the necessary funding to do what they have to do, which is provide for police and fire and things like that. So that's just a cautionary measure that we want to make sure that we're not hurting local governments, because they do have a lot of responsibilities to their citizens.
Will we see, Mr. Speaker, a long-term fix for the Medicaid waiver wait list?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of discussions around Medicaid in general. As we've noted, this is an incredibly important topic. Right now, the Medicaid costs are skyrocketing, have a huge impact on our budget, which means it's hard to come up with the dollars to support other needed programs like education, infrastructure, and other health-related programs. So, look, I think it's not just looking at the wait list, looking at the system as a whole, making sure that the Hoosiers that are eligible are on Medicaid, but making sure that those that don't meet eligibility requirements parents aren't receiving Medicaid benefits too. So, you know, we're going to have a comprehensive discussion around Medicaid. We are completely aware of the fact that that's helping some of the most needy Hoosiers in the state. We want to make sure we have a program that supports them, but a program that also is within the fiscal constraints that we have to be all and meets the needs of the folks that are receiving those services, but also is fiscally responsible.
Leader Giaquino, what can we expect from Democrats on this issue?
You know, as I've said before, where there's a will, there's a way. So we'll look for ways to make sure that those are most vulnerable or neediest Hoosiers are taken care of. And you know, you can look at different sort of priorities that have been taken place in the last couple budgets with regards to funding, for example, for IEDC or you know, a further increase in the private school voucher program. I mean, there's some money there that could potentially we could use to fill these funding gaps. So, you know, I think it's just a matter of the budget writers getting together, and we'll figure this out to make sure that our neediest Hoosiers are taken care of.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team on Braun's first few days in office when we return. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Tom John and Democrat Kip Tu. Let's begin with Governor Braun's budget. Tom, does this budget provide an answer to the state's Medicaid funding crisis, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's a great first step. I think you're seeing him come in day one. He's got several initiatives to say, okay, how do we begin to cut costs that we need to cut? How do we take a hard look at what we're doing, and are we doing it right? Can we do things more efficiently? Can we create opportunities for additional revenue to take care of the people that need to be taken care of, and to make sure that there's not fraud and abuse without? So I think it's a great first step. Obviously, he's got to go through session. He's got work to do there, and he's got to get all his people in there. But between the staff he's brought in and the secretary he's brought in, and then what he's proposing, I think it's a great start.
Kip, from where we sit right now, where do you think there might be the most agreement and disagreement between the two parties?
Before we talk about differences between the two parties, I think the Senate's Medicaid position is pretty significantly different at the moment than Governor Braun, so it's going to be interesting between the two of them to see where things are. I think the Senate's contemplating kicking 250,000 people off of Medicaid rolls. I don't think the Governor Braun has been quite that stark, so it'll be interesting where they come out. You know, I think Democrats are going to be looking to make sure that the most vulnerable aren't kicked off unnecessarily. Is there waste and abuse in the Medicaid program? Undoubtedly. There was a $1 billion mistake made by FSSA last year, and I hope that $1 billion mistake is not going to be, you know, the most vulnerable are going to have to pay the price for that $1 billion mistake, and that we get this thing fixed in a way. I know that there's lots of communities out there right now that feel like they're still not getting served by Medicaid. Right. There's a 9,000 plus member waiting list for seniors in one Medicaid program. You've got people with vulnerable children who are on waiting lists. So we better be very careful about how we go about this.
Definitely a delicate topic, no doubt. I also want to address Braun's first executive order, specifically dismantling the state's Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity. Now, Kip, the order specifically said no state funding for programs that grant preferential treatment. Does that leave the door open for some DEI programs to remain in modified form?
I certainly hope so. I think this is largely political optics. There's been an attack on those kinds of programs across the United States after, you know, the rise of Black Lives Matter, and I think it's an unfortunate political argument, because I think most Americans agree, most Hoosiers agree that there are people that are discriminated against and that have been historically second-class citizens in this country, and that we ought to do all we can to make sure that there's equality. And that's what most of those programs' focus is and was and should continue.
Tom, the state's own studies show minority-owned businesses consistently win state contracts at a rate far below their white-owned counterparts. Does this send a message that Indiana not open to business for those folks?
I don't think that's the case. I think really what you're going to find is an administration that wants to see people who are bringing innovation, who are bringing enterprising and new ideas to the state. but they don't want to, frankly, have a bow on it that indicates one thing or another. I think they'll encourage small businesses. They're going to encourage diverse businesses, but they felt like that this was not necessarily going to that goal, but it was more window dressing, frankly.
All right, gentlemen, sit tight. We're going to quickly take a quick break and be back with more political news coming up after the break. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Still with us, Democrat Kip Tu and Republican Tom John. The Supreme Court, gentlemen, on Friday unanimously upheld the federal ban on TikTok if the app's Chinese parent company does not sell it. Kip, did the court do the right thing here?
When the current Supreme Court has a unanimous opinion, I think it's something that is pretty extraordinary in and of itself because there's bitter disagreements on that court. I'm not an expert on TikTok, but I will say that I have been concerned for some time that the Chinese government's using it for data collection, and I think that's I don't think the Chinese government should be trusted.
Yeah. Tom, could this represent a turning point in the First Amendment case law?
I don't think it does. I think this is a very particular point, and I think it is telling that's per curiam that it was a unanimous decision by the court, that they looked at what Congress was taking on. This wasn't about what a streamer is putting on TikTok, but rather what could be happening unwittingly to many tens of millions of American citizens. And so, just as you'll see in sort of times of crisis, this is one of those examples where I think you've seen, and it's really an extraordinary circumstance that's not going to lead to other things in the First Amendment space.
And to be fair, the government did give them an out, said, hey, sell the company and, you'll be fine, but they didn't want to do that. So it is what it is, gentlemen. Hey, let's turn to tomorrow's inauguration of President Donald Trump. Tom, Trump's American Carnage speech last time raised more than a few eyebrows, to say the least. What will you be listening for tomorrow?
Well, inauguration is a moment of, change in the country, and it's about messaging. But really what I'm going to be looking for is less what's said on stage and more what's happening with the new tranche of people that are coming in that very clearly are meant to disrupt Washington, D.C. And I think come in with a much greater intentionality than 2016. I think it'll be interesting to see in the coming 100 days, 6 months, what happens and how they all proceed.
Kip, do you see a less confrontational approach to Trump from congressional Democrats this time around?
That remains to be seen. I certainly, if you watched the Hegseth committee hearings last week, I wouldn't say it was less confrontational. I'd say it was about where it should be. As I look towards tomorrow, I think it's a sad day for America. I think this man should not be in office. I think the release of the report last week on his leading the insurrection, he should be in jail and not be president of the United States. But a majority of the country disagreed with me, and so he's taking office, and Democrats did not decide to attack the Capitol, even though we disagree. We are turning power over to him. I hope he uses it wisely. I have very little faith he will.
Let's turn back to TikTok here quickly. I have about a minute left. Do you think Trump will go ahead and ban it?
I think if he can find a way to make money off it himself personally or his family, he'll allow it.
Tom, go ahead. You respond to that.
It's a national security risk. I've never had TikTok on my phone because it's always concerned me. And I think it's the right thing to do. I think there are a lot of people going to advise him to do it when it's said and done, unless they turn around and decide to come up with the divestiture. I think it will get banned.
Quickly, gentlemen, your thoughts on him moving it inside tomorrow?
Thought he was a strong man. I'm a little surprised.
Tom, go ahead. Take us home.
Well, I think, it's already decisions that are good for the American public. You don't want anybody getting frostbite as we get going. So it was the right thing, and I think it's an indication of things to come.
Kip, love that answer. I know you guys can't see each other. Good stuff, gentlemen. As always, good to see you both. We will talk soon. Thank you. We'll be right back. All right, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30, and be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. Again, the inauguration taking place tomorrow will have full coverage here on Wish TV and wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.